Perched atop a desolate hill, shrouded in an eternal veil of mist, stood the imposing Victorian mansion. Locals called it Whispering Walls, a name whispered with fear and trepidation. The house stood as a testament to a forgotten era, its once vibrant facade now crumbling, consumed by creeping ivy and shadowed by gnarled, skeletal trees. Its windows, dark and vacant, stared out like the eyes of a watchful specter. An unsettling silence hung heavy in the air around the house, broken only by the mournful creak of the rusty wrought-iron gate swinging in the wind. The gate, with its intricate designs now marred by time and neglect, seemed to whisper secrets of the past. Each creak and groan of the hinges echoed through the stillness, as if the mansion itself was sighing in sorrow. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, a silence that seemed almost alive, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The mansion loomed in the background, its windows dark and empty, like the hollow eyes of a long-forgotten ghost. The overgrown garden, once meticulously maintained, now lay in wild disarray, adding to the sense of abandonment and desolation. The wind rustled through the tall grass, creating a soft, whispering sound that only added to the eerie atmosphere. It was a place that seemed to exist outside of time, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. It was an almost tangible silence, a silence that seemed to listen, to watch. The hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit and filled with shadows that seemed to move and shift with every step I took. The walls, once adorned with elegant wallpaper, were now peeling and faded, revealing the bare, cracked plaster beneath. The floorboards creaked underfoot, each step echoing through the empty house like a ghostly footfall. The air was cold and damp, carrying with it the faint scent of mold and decay. It felt as though the house itself was alive, watching my every move, waiting for me to uncover its secrets. The silence was oppressive, pressing down on me from all sides, making it hard to breathe. It was a silence that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories, each one more haunting than the last. Inside, the air was thick with the musty odor of decay and the unseen presence of a century's worth of forgotten memories. The room was filled with old, decaying furniture, each piece covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. The wallpaper, once vibrant and colorful, was now faded and peeling, revealing the bare walls beneath. The floor was littered with debris, the remnants of a time long past. It was as if the room had been frozen in time, untouched for decades. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. It was a place that seemed to hold on to its past, refusing to let go of the memories that haunted its halls. The air was heavy with the weight of those memories, each one adding to the sense of unease that permeated the house. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that dared to penetrate the gloom, illuminating the faded grandeur of a bygone era. The light filtered through the cracked and dirty windows, casting long shadows across the room. The once grand interior, now faded and worn, still held a hint of its former glory. The intricate moldings and ornate fixtures, though covered in dust and grime, spoke of a time when the house was filled with life and laughter. Now it was a silent, empty shell, a ghost of its former self. The dust motes, floating lazily in the beams of light, seemed to be the only things moving in the stillness. It was a hauntingly beautiful sight, a reminder of the passage of time and the inevitability of decay. The silence, once oppressive, now felt almost peaceful, as if the house had finally found some measure of rest. It was a place of quiet reflection, a testament to the impermanence of all things. Whispers followed the house's long and troubled history. The previous occupants, the Harringtons, had fled in the dead of night, abandoning their possessions, claiming the house had driven them mad with its incessant whispers. There were stories, whispered in hushed tones, of a family torn apart by grief, of a father driven to madness by the loss of his wife and child, their souls forever tethered to the house. Deep within the bowels of the house, hidden beneath floorboards warped with time, lay a secret that had been buried for decades. The house itself seemed to groan under the weight of its own history, each creak and moan a testament to the lives that had once filled its rooms. The air was thick with dust and memories, and the dim light barely penetrated the gloom. It was here in this forgotten corner that a dusty leather-bound diary was discovered. The diary, hidden away from prying eyes, had been waiting patiently to reveal its secrets. The leather cover was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age, But it was clear that this was no ordinary book. It held within it the whispers of the past, the echoes of a life long gone. Its pages, brittle with age, told a tale of despair, of dreams shattered and hopes dashed. The ink had faded, but the emotions were still palpable. Each word seemed to bleed sorrow, each sentence a cry for help. The diary was a window into a soul tormented by loss and grief, a testament to a love that had been torn asunder. It spoke of a love lost too soon, a love that had been the center of Eleanor Harrington's world. Eleanor, the woman to whom the diary belonged, had poured her heart into its pages. She wrote of her beloved, of the joy they had shared, and of the pain that had followed his untimely death. Her words were filled with longing, a desperate yearning for a time that could never be reclaimed. The house, once filled with laughter and love, had become a place of sorrow and desolation. The rooms, now empty and silent, seemed to echo with the grief that had consumed Eleanor. Each piece of furniture, each shadowy corner, held a memory of happier times, now tainted by the sadness that had followed. The diary belonged to Eleanor Harrington, the deceased wife. Her life, once filled with promise, had been cut short by tragedy. The photographs and mementos she left behind were all that remained of a life that had been full of love and hope. The diary was her final testament, a record of her innermost thoughts and fears. Her words, filled with longing and a growing sense of dread, spoke of strange occurrences that had begun to plague her. She wrote of shadows that moved on their own, of whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Her handwriting grew more frantic as the entries progressed, each word a reflection of her mounting fear. She described the whispers in the dead of night, the cold spots that seemed to follow her from room to room. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a place of terror. The nights were the worst, filled with eerie sounds and an overwhelming sense of dread. Eleanor felt as though she was never alone, as though unseen eyes were always watching her. The feeling of being constantly watched had driven Eleanor to the brink of madness. She wrote of her fear, her isolation, and her desperate attempts to understand what was happening to her. The diary was her only confidant, the only place where she could pour out her soul. And now, decades later, it had been found, its secrets finally revealed. One chilling entry recounted a particularly disturbing incident. Eleanor wrote of waking in the night to the sound of her name being whispered, a chorus of voices echoing around her room. She described feeling a cold hand brush against her cheek, and the sensation of someone or something leaning in close, their breath hot and fetid against her ear. The entries ended abruptly after that night, leaving a chilling silence in their wake. What had become of Eleanor Harrington, and why had her family fled the house so suddenly? The diary's discovery sent a shiver down my spine. As I continued to explore the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that I was not alone. As the sun began its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn, the world seemed to hold its breath. The garden, once vibrant and full of life, now lay in a state of neglect, with weeds and wildflowers reclaiming the space. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay, a reminder of the passage of time and the secrets buried within. I found myself drawn back to the room described in Eleanor's diary. Her words had painted a vivid picture of a place steeped in mystery and sorrow. The old house, with its creaking floors and whispering walls, seemed to call out to me, urging me to uncover its hidden truths. As I approached the door, my heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and anticipation coursing through my veins. The air in the room was heavy, oppressive, as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for something to happen. Dust motes danced in the dim light, creating an almost ethereal glow. The room felt frozen in time, a relic of a bygone era. Every corner seemed to whisper secrets, and the peeling paint on the walls told stories of years gone by. It was as if the room itself was alive, watching, waiting. As I reached out to touch the cold, damp wall, I felt it. A chill ran down my spine, and my fingers tingled with the sensation of something otherworldly. The wall was not just cold, it was as if it held the memories of all who had touched it before. The moisture on the surface seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and I could almost hear the faint echoes of voices long silenced. A sudden rush of cold air, a whisper of movement just at the edge of my vision, and a voice soft as a sigh brushing against my ear. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate, to share its sorrow and its secrets. The voice was barely audible, a mere breath of sound, but it sent shivers down my spine. I stood there, frozen, listening intently, trying to make out the words. The room seemed to close in around me, the walls pressing in, and I felt a deep sense of unease. What had happened here? What stories did this house hold, and why had Eleanor been so drawn to this place? The questions swirled in my mind, and I knew that I had to find the answers no matter the cost. "Get out," it whispered. "Get out while you still can." I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Had I imagined it? Was the house playing tricks on me, feeding on my fear? Or was it something more? As I fled the house, the whispers echoing in my ears, I couldn't help but question my own sanity. Was the haunting real, or was it all in my head? The house on the hill remains, a silent sentinel shrouded in mystery. The whispers continue, a haunting reminder of a past that refuses to be forgotten. And I am left to grapple with the chilling truth. Some secrets are best left buried.